Hi, I'm Anthony. At 21, still living at home with my parent was not exactly ideal. Even less ideal was the fact that I've never had a girlfriend. I was working hard to save up money and move. My life was so monotonous, it gave me lots of time to think, fantasizing about my first time, mostly, and, in particular, Mrs. Portman next door. During the last few weeks, I'd been dreaming about my neighbor, Mrs. Portman. She moved in 6 months ago, bringing a breath of mystery to our otherwise predictable neighborhood. She is pregnant. What puzzled me most was that I'd never seen her husband, or any man, for that matter, around her. Let me try to describe her to you, though I'm not sure I'll do her justice. She's one of those women you notice the second she walks into a room. Not because she demands attention, but because she just has it. You know what I mean? She's got this fiery red hair that falls in soft waves, with these perfect freckles sprinkled across her fair skin, like they were painted on just to make her more unforgettable. And her eyes? They're this deep, vibrant green that seem to look right through you, like she already knows all your secrets. She's 40, but honestly, she looks like she's mastered the art of timeless beauty. Her figure is stunning, with curves that flow naturally, and she carries herself with this grace that makes everything she does look effortless. She's pregnant, about 4 months, I think, but you'd barely notice unless you look closely. There's just this small curve to her belly, subtle enough that it almost feels like a secret she's letting you in on. I never had the courage to talk to her beyond a polite greeting. Good morning or hi, how are you, with the extent of our exchanges. And even then, I'd walk away replaying those brief moments over and over in my head. One day, when I got back from work, my mom asked me if I wanted to make some extra money. Mrs. Portman had spoken to her earlier and asked if someone could come over to her house to feed her cat and water her plants while she was on vacation. I liked the idea of earning a little extra cash, but what really excited me was the chance to step inside her house, to see it from the inside, to catch a glimpse of her world, the one I had only imagined from afar. While I was at work, my mom sent me a message. Mrs. Portman just left. The instructions and the house keys are on the table for you. The thought of stepping into her house filled my mind. As soon as my shift ended, I rushed home, eager to start. After a quick shower, I grabbed the keys and headed over. The moment I stepped inside, it felt like I'd walked into a magazine spread. Everything was so meticulously decorated. Luxury furniture, carefully chosen colors, and an atmosphere of understated elegance. I found the cat lounging on a plush velvet armchair that looked more expensive than my car. It barely glanced at me as I filled its bowl with food. Then I moved on to the plants, which were everywhere, on shelves, in hanging pots, even on the windowsills. Curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself wandering through the house, exploring every room. Each one seemed to tell a story about her, a life of sophistication, taste, and control. I saved Mrs. Portman's bedroom for last. The moment I stepped inside, I was struck by how spacious and luxurious it was. The scent hit me next, a subtle, intoxicating mix of perfume and something else I couldn't quite place. It smelled like her. Not just any perfume, but the kind of scent that made you think of strength, elegance, and confidence. The room had a massive bed with perfectly arranged cushions and silky sheets. There was an en-suite bathroom with a large, inviting bathtub. Everything about the room screamed luxury. I couldn't stop myself from opening the closet. My heart raced as I slid open the doors, revealing rows of perfectly hung dresses, elegant coats, and neatly folded sweaters. And then, tucked away in a section of the closet, I found her lingerie. My breath caught in my throat. The delicate fabrics, intricate designs, and soft textures of the pieces left me speechless. Satin, lace, silk, all in colors that exuded both confidence and sensuality. Just holding one of the garments between my fingers made my pulse quicken. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed a pair of her underwear and, unable to resist, laid back on her enormous bed. The silky sheets cradled me as I held the delicate fabric close to my face, inhaling deeply, desperate to capture every trace of her scent. It was intoxicating, a mixture of perfume and something uniquely her. Lost in the moment, I didn't hear the door open or the footsteps approaching. "What are you doing?" The sharp, furious voice snapped me out of my haze. My heart dropped into my stomach as I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her face a mix of shock and rage. I stammered, my mind scrambling for an explanation that didn't exist. I thought, weren't you supposed to be on vacation? Her eyes narrowed, her anger cutting through the air like a blade. My flight was canceled. I came back to find a sick boy in my house. Her voice trembled with fury. Wait until I tell your mother about this. I shot up from the bed, the incriminating piece of lingerie still in my hand. Please, Mrs. Portman, I didn't mean. My words were useless, jumbled, and meaningless in the face of her burning glare. Desperate and terrified, I sank to my knees, my hands trembling as I clutched the delicate underwear. I'm so sorry, I stammered, my voice cracking. I didn't mean to. I was just curious. For a moment, she stood there, her furious gaze never leaving me. But then, to my surprise, her expression softened ever so slightly. Her shoulders relaxed, and she let out a long, controlled breath. Wait, she said, her voice calmer now, but still carrying an edge. I'll calm down first. For starters, she said, I'm not Mrs. Portman. She paused, letting her words sink in. I'm Ms. Portman. My marital status is of no concern to you or anyone else. From now on, she continued, you will address me as Ms. Portman and nothing else. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Ms. Portman turned on her heel and walked towards her closet, her movements controlled and deliberate. I barely had time to process what was happening when she returned, holding something in her hand. It was a riding crop, one of those long, thin whips used for horses. My breath caught in my throat as she walked closer, the leather handle glinting in the light. Before I could react, she raised the crop and swung it with precision, the sharp crack of it cutting through the air as it landed across my back. The sting was immediate, intense, and I gasped in shock, my body flinching in pain. Today, she said, her voice cold and commanding, you'll learn who I really am. Your mom told me you've never had a girlfriend and don't have many friends, her voice laced with mockery. My face burned with shame, my throat tightening as the weight of her words sank in. I always thought you were cute, she continued, when you'd wave at me outside your house. But now I see you're just a pathetic loser. Her words stung worse than the riding crop. My head dropped, unable to meet her piercing gaze. And now, she said, her voice dripping with disdain, I see you like women's underwear. Fine, put it on. I froze for a moment, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. But the cold, expectant look in her eyes left no doubt. Trembling, I slipped the garment over my clothes, feeling utterly humiliated. Before I could even glance up, the riding crop cracked against my arm, sending a jolt of pain through me. Are you stupid? She hissed. Don't put it on over your clothes. I followed the command. The soft fabric of her lingerie felt strange against my skin as I fumbled through it, my face burning with humiliation. Look at you, she sneered, circling me like a predator. Pathetic, but we'll fix that. She raised the crop again, its swish in the air making me shudder. From now on, you belong to me. You'll do what I say when I say it. Is that clear? I nodded meekly, too scared to speak. Good, now let's see how well you can follow instructions. Her voice was cold and commanding as she towered over me. You will do exactly as I tell you. Nothing more, nothing less. Understood? I nodded meekly, my body shaking in a mix of fear and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. She slowly circled me, the click of her heels echoing through the room. Good. Now I want you to crawl to me on your hands and knees. Slowly. When I reached her feet, she smiled, a predatory smile that sent shivers down my spine. That's better, she purred. Now, show me how sorry you are. Use your tongue on my shoes. I hesitated for a moment, earning another sharp smack of the crop across my back. The pain made me gasp, but I quickly lowered my head to her feet. I ran my tongue over and over her shoes. Remember, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Do only what I tell you. Nothing more, nothing less. Disobedience will be punished. She kicked off her shoes, and I reached for her feet. Mrs. Portman's high-pitched voice cut through the air, her eyes glinting dangerously. "Did I give you permission to do that?" The sting of the riding crop on my back was a harsh reminder of my place. "Now, let's see if you can follow simple instructions." Miss Portman's commanding voice sent a shiver down my spine as she instructed me to stand and close my eyes. I complied instantly, my heart pounding in my chest. With my vision obscured, my other senses heightened dramatically. Her intoxicating scent enveloped me, a mix of expensive perfume and something uniquely her. I felt the cool leather of the crop trace along my body, coming to rest against my most sensitive area. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Suddenly, I heard the sharp whistle of the crop cutting through the air. Instinctively, my eyes flew open, fearing the impending strike. Her gaze bore into me, her displeasure evident. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "I told you to keep your eyes closed," she said, her voice dangerously soft. "It seems you need another lesson in obedience." Mrs. Portman's warm breath caressed my ear as she whispered, "I don't want you to move." Her right hand began to explore my body with surprising tenderness. She traced the contours of my chest, abdomen, and hips before finally reaching my manhood. Her gaze locked with mine as she wrapped her fingers around my taut length. "Very good," she purred. "I see you're enjoying this." The command was clear: stay still. I held her intense gaze head-on, determination burning in my own eyes. As if sensing my resolve, Mrs. Portman squeezed my grapes firmly with her hand, increasing the pressure little by little, until I felt unbearable pain. But I didn't flinch or blink. My body remained rigid under her touch, focused solely on pleasing her, obeying without hesitation or complaint. Her hand released its grip, and I immediately felt relief, followed by a wave of unease as she smiled and spoke. "You did well," she praised me, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Now it's time for your reward." With that, she revealed the lush curves of her body inch by inch. My gaze was drawn inexorably to the soft curve of her pregnant belly, an unfamiliar, yet strangely alluring sight. As Mrs. Portman settled herself onto the bed, I stood paralyzed, unsure of what to do next. But her husky command broke my paralysis. "Bring your head here." Without hesitation or question, I crawled toward her. My face was level with her thighs. Her skin smelled intoxicatingly sweet, a mix of soft scents and something uniquely feminine that made my heart race. "Women in my condition require a lot of affection and stimulation," she said. As she guided my face to her lower belly, she said, "You will show me the respect a pregnant woman deserves." As I leaned forward to press my lips against the soft, rounded expanse, I felt a strange sense of reverence wash over me. This was something entirely new, worshiping the body of a goddess in this way. She let out a sigh of contentment as I kissed and caressed her curves, tracing patterns with my tongue and lips along the subtle contours. Her skin was warm, almost feverish under my touch. "You're an amateur, but you're doing very well," she murmured after a while, her hands gently stroking my hair. My lips danced across her skin, leaving trails of heat in their wake. .ms. Portman's hands tightened in my hair, guiding me into a more intimate caress. "That's it," she purred, her voice heavy with desire. "Make me feel cherished." I redoubled my efforts, lavishing every inch of her curves with tender kisses and soft bites. Her scent was intoxicating, a heady mix of arousal and something uniquely hers that had my head spinning. As if sensing my fascination, she urged me closer with a gentle press of her legs. "Your taste is quite intense," I managed to stammer out, awed by the unfamiliar flavors on my tongue. "Ah, yes," she purred in response. "Pregnancy tends to intensify certain sensations." My heart was pounding harder. The thought that my first time would be with this enigmatic woman was both terrifying and exhilarating. I found myself rising to stand in front of her, ready to take that step into adulthood when Mrs. Portman brought the crop down on my back again with a sharp crack. "I'm sorry," I muttered, my voice trembling with a mix of shame and confusion. She stared at me, her piercing green eyes cutting through me. "Enough," she said, her tone calm but carrying a dangerous edge. "What?" I exclaimed, overwhelmed by the situation. The word had barely left my mouth when the riding crop struck me again, this time harder. "Go wash your face," she commanded, her voice cold and firm, as if she were used to being obeyed without question. "And fill the bathtub with water." I still have a chance, I thought to myself, clinging to that fragile hope as I washed my face in the bathroom sink. I turned on the bathtub faucet, letting the water begin to fill, and then walked back into her bedroom. The moment I stepped inside, her voice cut through the air. "Get out," she snapped, her tone laced with disdain. "I need to bathe and get your stench off me." I froze, unsure of what to say or do. My confusion must have shown because she didn't wait for me to react. She swung the crop again, the sharp sting jolting me back to reality. Then she leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. Her voice dropped to a low, almost playful whisper. "I'm gonna have so much fun with you." Still dazed and trying to make sense of her words, I stumbled out of the house, my mind racing and my body still buzzing from the shock of everything that had just happened. As I head home, lost in thought, multiple scenarios play out in my mind like a twisted film reel. Being dominated by this enigmatic woman, my first time with her, even the taboo thrill of being with a pregnant woman. Each fantasy leaves me breathless and wanting more. One thing is certain, this wouldn't be my last encounter with her.